Okay, I'm going to tell you why you have high blood pressure. First off, let's start with nicotine. But before I explain what nicotine does, let me talk about what is normal. So normal function you have neurotransmitters that are released from neurons. So this is a neuron. It's the end of a neuron. And at the ends of neurons are muscles. So this is going to be our muscle. Something called acetylcholine gets released from the end of a neuron. Acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter. So I'm going to put ACH for acetylcholine. And on muscle cells, there are little receptors. Now, acetylcholine goes inside of the receptor, attaches to it, and then the muscle contracts. So those receptors are on every single muscle. So, acetylcholine attaches and the muscle contracts. Now, something you might not know is that blood vessels actually have muscle too. There's a little muscle that goes around blood vessels. So another view of that is, let's like look down into it like we're looking into a garden hose. So there's a layer of muscle. And those have attachment points for the neurotransmitters too, because when we need to increase our blood pressure, then acetylcholine will attach to it and it will make the vessels constrict. So when acetylcholine touches the receptors, the blood vessels get smaller. So it goes from looking like this to being more like this. And that increases blood pressure. So if you think about it, if you have a wide garden hose compared to a smaller garden hose, so like the lumen, there's a big one and there's a smaller garden hose. The smaller garden hose is going to have more pressure. So you can think of blood pressure like pressure. Even in plumbing, smaller tubes are going to have higher pressure. So blood pressure will go higher when the blood vessels constrict. Now nicotine, let's use a different color, nicotine. And we'll make nicotine triangles. Nicotine can actually go on these neurotransmitters. So let's see here. Have another blood vessel. The muscle in it, blood vessel. Okay, so those are for the acetylcholine, but nicotine can take over those receptors. Not letting me grab it here. Okay, so it can actually take over those receptors and it works the same way. So nicotine will make the vessels constrict, and it also makes them constrict. And so if you're smoking or chewing or vaping, the nicotine is in there. So all of your blood vessels are getting this overload of nicotine and it's causing them to constrict, which increases blood pressure. Nicotine also makes your body release dopamine, and that's why you like nicotine. That's why it makes you feel good, and that's why it's hard to quit smoking or chewing and those things. Also, your heart is a muscle. So nicotine also directly affects your heart. it's going to make your heart pump faster. That's why you have a fast heart rate, an increased heart rate. And then your blood vessels constrict, which makes them smaller, which makes it pump harder. So that's your increased blood pressure. Now you have lots of blood vessels, but something can go wrong with your heart pumping faster and harder. These blood vessels can actually break. So not only are you having high blood pressure and high heart rate, which can cause you to have a heart attack, but so this right here is your aorta. It's the biggest vessel in your body. It's the thickest. It has the most muscle. So it's pumping really, really hard anyways. And then when you're adding to that, it's a lot. It's very intense. So this goes all the way down your body. And it's responsible for, this is where all of your arteries branch off from. It goes to all of your organs everywhere. But what can happen is that, let's take a look at this spot right here. This is in your abdomen. It can balloon out from all of the pressure that is constantly happening on it. And then it can eventually burst. Now, if your aorta was to burst, you would die within like 30 seconds to a minute because it's so much, all of your blood is coming through your aorta. So that is a huge risk factor of nicotine use, is that your aorta bursts open and you die very quickly. Like, you can't be saved if it happens. Okay, so then the second reason that you have high blood pressure is diet. Diet is huge. I'm going to talk about one thing. Well, I'll talk about two things. First, I'll talk about salt, also known as sodium. And then we'll talk about fat. Okay, so salt. To put this very simply, here's a blood vessel again. When you eat salt, it goes into your blood. Your kidneys are responsible for filtering things out. So this is a kidney and this is a ureter. That's where your pee goes out of it goes to your bladder and then you pee it out. But inside of your kidney, let's blow up the inside of the kidney. You have millions of these things called nephrons. And that's actually what's filtering through the blood. So your nephrons are what actually chooses what stays and what goes. Okay, so there's it's this tube system. So now this right here is the blood. These are the little tiny capillaries that are being filtered. Like I said, there's millions of these things inside of your kidneys. So this is doing all the filtering. Now, this little guy right here is your glomerulus. And there's some cells around the glomerulus that when they sense sodium in your blood, they're like, hey, we need to get rid of this sodium. There's too much sodium in here. So what happens is the way that your nephrons get rid of stuff like drugs or sugar or sodium causes it to increase your blood pressure. Your kidneys have hormones, and so they release those hormones to tell other parts of your body to increase your blood pressure. So your heart will start beating faster and harder when it senses salt. And salt is actually causing that directly. So all the salt is traveling down, and then your body is getting rid of it. So the increased blood pressure pushes the fluid through your nephrons faster to get everything out quickly, because your body does not want salt inside of it. If there's too much, you need some salt, but not too much. So salt is going to directly increase your blood pressure. Fat. So let's go back to talking about your veins, your arteries. They are like plumbing. So here is an artery. When you eat fat, your body doesn't get rid of all of your fat. So first off, smoking, chewing, those kinds of things, they're doing damage to your vessels. So they'll put like little holes, and salt does this. Think of it like kind of like sandpaper. It's just like roughing up the inside of your vessel. So I'm going to zoom in here. This is like a zoomed in portion. Make this bigger. Zoomed. Now you've got these like little rough spots. So when fat goes inside of your body, here's the fat particles. They're going to be traveling down with your blood. Oops, that's too big. Say the blood's flowing that way. Well, the fat, it's going to like be traveling down, but it's going to get caught. It's going to get caught in those things. And fat is sticky. So once it starts getting caught in these things, the rest are going, and this is going to be called plaque. So this is going to end up being huge plaques, and they're just going to like end up sticking together like that. All right. So once you start getting a plaque buildup, it's going to just get bigger and bigger. And this is happening all over your vessels. Now, remember I said that when your vessels get narrow, it increases your blood pressure because there's more resistance over here. I'm just going to make this like resistance. So it's having a hard time moving. So back here, you've got pressure. So pressure. It's trying to push through, but it's so narrow right here. All right. Eventually, vessels, they can become totally occluded with fat, and they can become completely blocked off. If this was to happen inside of your heart, like right here, you would die pretty much instantly. So, to review, nicotine, it acts like acetylcholine, which causes your blood vessels to constrict, which makes them, it makes your heart pump faster, and it pumps harder. So you'll have an increased heart rate and increased blood pressure. Salt increases your blood pressure because your body does not want too much salt inside of it. So anything fast food, anything like beef jerky, anything that's like sugars, that's going to do it too. And then fat is going to stick inside of your vessels. It'll cause a narrowing of your vessels, which is going to increase your blood pressure, and it can cause a complete blockage, like right here. And that's a heart attack. Actually, that is how you have a heart attack. So there's that.